Hello, in this video and the next several videos to follow, we will be discussing the nervous system. This video will include a basic overview of the basic unit of structure of the nervous system, that being the neuron. So what is the nervous system? The nervous system is a means by which different cells can communicate with each other in a very rapid and direct fashion. The other way is the endocrine system, in which the body can communicate with each other, the cells can communicate with each other. However, it is in a slower and much more long-lasting fashion via the utilization of hormones. Okay? Now, the nervous system is a way by which cells can communicate very fast via the use of neurotransmitters and the basic unit of structure of the nervous system, that being the neuron, as I mentioned. Okay? Now, neurons can come in different types and different shapes. However, they all have basic units of structure and components that they utilize. Okay? That being dendrites, a soma or a cell body, an axon hillock, an axon or essentially a wire, as well as axon terminals, okay, and the endings of axon terminals, which can also be known as a synaptic bouton. That is this, okay? So what are these underlying components? Dendrites, to start, come off of the cell body or the soma, and essentially what they do is they accept signals from other cells, right, and essentially act as a relay station to initiate another action potential to communicate with other cells or effector cells. Okay? Now, the cell body includes all of the organelles that help the cell survive and thrive. So, for example, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, both smooth and rough, the nucleus, right? Things that help the cell and that are necessary for survival, okay? That is the cell body or the soma. Now, the axon hillock is the connection point between the axon or electrical wire and the cell body, okay? Now, we will get into this into later videos, but in order for an action potential to propagate down the axon to the next cell or postsynaptic cell, it has to go through the axon hillock, okay? Now, the axon hillock is where the action potential is generated, and it's generated if it hits its threshold value. Okay, and we will discuss that in a different video, but if you want to know, it's about -45 millivolts is that threshold value. Okay, now if threshold value is hit, that electrical signal is sent through this wire or this axon and is the bridge between the axon hillock and the axon terminals. Okay, now the axon terminal, it transmits signals to the postsynaptic cell, or the cell in which the signal will relay to. Okay, now at the end of these projections right here is what is called the synaptic bouton. Okay, and that is what releases neurotransmitters, namely acetylcholine, to the next cell. Okay, so these neurotransmitters will bind to a receptor, which will enable sodium to go inside and depolarize that cell to start the next action potential. Okay, again, we'll discuss that in future videos. Now, in summary, our propagation of an action potential can be basically summarized in 3 steps. 1, the signal is accepted by the dendrites, that's these guys. Okay, if the stimulation is high enough, meaning if it hits its threshold value of about -45 millivolts, which we mentioned before, the axon will generate an action potential. And this electrical signal will essentially go down this wire. Okay? So the electrical signal reaches the axon terminal and it stimulates it to release these neurotransmitters, okay? Which essentially stimulates the postsynaptic or the next cell to initiate an action potential as well. Okay? Now, neurons and glucose. Neurons primarily use glucose or sugar, the simplest form of sugar, for energy. Okay? But neurons, unlike other cells, they can't store a lot of glucose. So it's dependent on the blood supply for a continuous supply of glucose for energy. Okay? Now, also to note, neurons do not need to utilize insulin in order to bring glucose into the cell. It's able to use insulin, however, it is not necessary for the neuron to essentially pick up glucose and utilize it for its metabolic processes to occur.